everybody. Welcome to Kundalini Hour with very special guest, Dr. Gabriel Cousens. I am so excited, and if you're sensitive to the Shakti at all, I'm sure you can feel it right now because I'm flying high on his beautiful energy. So I read Dr. Cousens' book this week, and it seems like you've lived about 30 lives in one life. I'm not quite sure how you've done it, but you've done, wow, spectacular, amazing work in this lifetime. I'm going to read just a little bit of his, biography so you guys can know, if you don't know who he is, what a beautiful being he is. Okay, so since 1973, Dr. Cousens has presented seminars on topics including health and nutrition, psycho-spiritual healing, meditation, and spiritual awareness. He's been part of the yoga world since 1973 and received much of his training and experience as a spiritual master and Kundalini expert. He organized the first Kundalini Crisis Clinic in the world with Dr. Lee Sanella in 1976 during a 7-year sadhana with Swami Muktananda and his 11-year sadhana with Swami Prakashananda. In 1981, Swami Prakashananda, Muktananda's first liberated disciple, publicly recognized him as a yogi of real spiritual attainment who has realized the innate perfection. He was also acknowledged by Swami Muktananda just prior to his death in 1982. Dr. Cousens is internationally celebrated as a spiritual master, a rabbi ordained by Rabbi Gerson Winkler in 2008, founder of the Modern Essene Order of Light in 1993, and a Kabbalah student since 1970. He is also a 4-year Native American sun dancer, eagle dancer, and spirit dance clan chief in the High Horse Lakota clan into which he has been adopted. Dr. Cousens' spiritual background involves extensive study and personal experience in 3 major traditions that has given him a unique, authentic, interfaith, and unified worldview. In addition to the 3 major lineage traditions he carries, Dr. Cousens has a background in Taoism and has studied at the main Shaolin Temple in China. His many designations attest to a dynamic, eclectic, comprehensive body of practical knowledge that creates the foundation for his unique teachings on holistic liberation and live food veganism. Dr. Cousens functions as a holistic physician, homeopath, psychiatrist, family therapist, Ayurvedic practitioner, and a Chinese herbalist, working in an interfaith way. So welcome. So
well, Kai, I'm very happy to be with you on this program. This is good.
This is awesome. Yes. So I don't know where you would like to start. I usually start with having people talk a little bit about their own awakening, Kundalini awakening experience and their own journey with the Kundalini. So unless you have another idea, would you like to talk about
fine.
that?
I do write about it in my book, Into the Nothing, which just came out. Okay.
I read Into the Nothing this week and it was fabulous. I really love the part about the sacred relationships too. Right. You and Shanti sound like such an amazing couple.
Yeah. So in a way, I'll put it this way. There's some humor to it, but it gives you a sense of what this is about. All I ever learned in life was from meditating, sacred relationships, and playing American football. Now, you got to have a humor. So what would playing American football have to do with awakening? So we'll kind of start there. And the answer is that when you go beyond your idea of who you think you are, then the world kind of opens up, and not only just to what we call the zone, but really into direct spiritual experience, because you've transcended your egoic idea of limitations. And you, in a sense, move into the oneness. So that's what really happened with the playing of football. It kind of created on a regular basis a very expanded awareness, going beyond the illusion of who I thought it was. So it was a real wake-up call for me. Now, go ahead.
Do you have a simple explanation or example of how that might be? Some people might not be able to see the connection there.
Well, when you're going beyond your limitations, physically, emotionally, mentally, it also leaks into the spiritual. It wasn't like my primary thing, but it leaks into that. And there were times in specific, whereas my spiritual kind of opening in the middle of a football field affected everybody else. And literally, our team would go into oneness. And people were aware it was me, okay, coming from me. But what I'm trying to say is that there's like a unified field that gets created in the sense of that oneness. But it starts with going beyond your limitations. Okay. And that's the key. So once you kind of, under the intensity of that, you open up to different planes. And that's really how that worked.
And you experienced that in football at that time?
On a regular basis.
Wow, that's amazing.
Because, well, there's a little background. So when I was 4 years old, for whatever reason, because it had never been in my family, I knew I wanted to be a physician. I didn't know what that meant. When I was 8, I began having visions of divine beings, one of them being Sai Baba Shirdi, who was equivalent in a sense to Nityananda, according to Muktananda. And I spent a lot of time in his masjid, sleeping on the floor there. Okay. And then Abraham, and then Lakota, crazy horse. So I began having these visions at an early age, and then it set me up for kind of deeper awarenesses. When I was 16, my older brother was killed in a car accident, and I kind of entered more deeply into meditation, trying to understand what is this about. Okay. Well, the truth is, I started life at 1 year old with TB, which in 1943 is a death sentence. So my mother said no, because there's no medication in 1943. So my mother kept me at home, and I was basically born into the energy of death and learning to transcend death. And that was a big part of my spiritual path, is who can help me really understand this. Now, you can read in a book different philosophies, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's like the direct experience that takes you beyond that. So I was always looking for something that would wake me up to that. So I've given you kind of the mystical background. And then at the age of 33, I met Swami Muktananda. Actually, Dr. Lee Sunil and I both went down to his Oakland ashram. So Lee Sunil lived, he was my neighbor, he was a neighbor. So we did a lot. So, okay, this is important. Let's go explore the Kundalini issue with him. We had developed, believe it or not, a Kundalini machine. Muktananda saw it and thought it was very, very funny. He said, if you want to learn about
before you met him, right, you developed.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
That's very funny. It's very funny. So he had a good laugh, and he said, well, just come to an intensive, let's see what happens. And
how did your Kundalini machine work? Did it work?
It could activate. I can't tell you it really awoke in the Kundalini, but I can say it was something happening. You know, it was designed in Isaac Bentoff's Stalking the Wild Pendulum book and information. And so we were kind of interested, but we didn't really understand these things. Okay. So I received Shaktipat from Swami Muktananda, and in my book, I describe a variety of things, but summarizing all the experiences into one, although they're separated in the book into the nothing. Basically, all the chakras lit up. I saw all the internal anatomy, and then I merged into the nothing. Okay.
That was your first Shaktipat experience?
Yeah. And I didn't know what was going on. Okay. And then, and on the way coming down, a little voice rang out and said, you should learn to eat and live in a way that supports the Kundalini energy. So that actually started the whole more conscious relationship with Kundalini. Age 33, I was with Muktananda for 7 years in that process. And I'm going to say it a different way, but this is again a football thing. You learn a certain amount of perseverance. So I began meditating 6 hours a day, which was in the ashram, which is very intense. Okay, and then chanting 4.5 hours a day, and hanging out with Muktananda about 2 hours a day for a satsang.
Wow.
So you're a lot of time. But
Yes.
that intensity I learned from football to apply myself, focused, was a huge skill. Okay, I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And so now it applies to that. And so that's what I did for 6 years, living in the ashram. And he was a traveling ashram too. He was all over the kind of world. So we were in Ganeshbury and kind of lived there. And in South Fallsburg, which was his main ashram in New York. Met him at the Oakland ashram. So he
you literally went where he went. You would move with him.
Yes. And then I really enjoyed the Ganeshbury, which is his primary ashram. And that's where I met Swami Prakashananda, who was his first acknowledged enlightened disciple in 1969 is when he was acknowledged by Muktananda. And I didn't know who he was, but I'm in the ashram and I'm feeling this field of love. It's like, what is going on? And so I turned around and saw Swami Prakashananda. It's like, well, who's that? And then we developed a relationship over time. And I spent a lot of time with him as well. And he was really the very first to acknowledge me, as being liberated. And so there was an extension because it's really the same lineage.
Right.
So
how many years after you received your first Shaktipat until that liberation moment?
About 7 years.
Okay.
But I want to make the distinction. I'm not calling it a liberation moment.
Okay.
Because it's very important. It just gradually grew of having into the nothing, into the truth. And then at some point, the glass ceiling of the mind shattered based on all these accumulated experiences. So that became my regular state. So there's experiences like into the one, okay, dissolving into nothing, but they added up. And so there was a steady transformation of consciousness over time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So,
yes.
And then finally, the glass ceiling of the mind broke. There is in the Siddha tradition, there is a kind of a statement, you need a final initiation. So I used to meditate 2 hours 3 times a day, and at my new meditation, suddenly I got this message that I needed to go to the little inner courtyard outside of Muktananda's, where he lived. And so usually I was just by myself, but I went there and people were meditating. I go out and he immediately comes out and walks over to me and does the final initiation, bringing the energy up from here to here. Now, it's not that the energy wasn't there, but it's stabilized. So he put his hand above my head and it kind of stabilized in the crown chakra. So that was the final blessing, because I had no idea how that was going to happen, because I didn't hang out with him. Some people were just, there were their medical thing or this thing or that. I was just in the field. Okay. Although I was the only non-Swami that he would let be near him the Swamis would stand near him while he was doing darshan. Darshan is where people come up to meet him. And so I was able, along with the Swamis, to, let's see if I'm going to say it right, to able to hear how he was teaching. Because people would come up for individual instruction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Wow, that's valuable.
He was, in a sense, acknowledging me in that kind of subtle way that I needed to be part at the Swami level of instruction to see what was going on.
That's beautiful. I don't remember you mentioning that in the book.
No, I'm not sure I did. There are a lot of things going on. But the other thing is, I was always in this field, although I didn't try to be, so personal. So, for example, I was, my wife and I would take turns with our kids, So I was in charge of the kids while she was going to satsang that day, and after they were kind of tucked in for their afternoon nap, I went up on the roof and began to meditate. But I went so deep into the one that I was really, really gone. Well, it was a very hot day. Okay.
Oh my gosh, on the roof.
I was oblivious to that. So somebody fell off their bike, and Muktananda said, "Go get the doctor." Now, nobody got hurt. Okay. So people rushed to find me, and they went to see my kids, and then I was up on the roof, and I was like really going for several hours in the blazing sun. I wasn't feeling anything because I was in samadhi, but they pulled me out of it. And what's my point is that even though I wasn't sitting next to him, I was in that energetic field, and he could feel that I needed to be out of the sun. Because of the hot Indian sun at 120 degrees, it's hot.
Oh my God.
So there was that kind of relationship that I was in his field. Now, the other thing is, as a doctor, I had a certain amount of access, which I wasn't interested in being his doctor per se, but we did do some blood tests, and I took a drop of his blood and put it on my tongue as part of that shamanic approach. And I was like in the cosmic consciousness for like 3 days. Because
can I ask you,
the energy of the soul. Yeah, go ahead.
I was curious why you chose not to be his personal doctor. It seems like you would have wanted that really close kind of connection.
It's a little complicated, but I'll just say it was more important I meditate and do the inner transformation rather than the play that people get into being, oh, I'm his favorite or I'm this, and all the, let's say, kind of a little bit craziness that goes around those situations. It was far more important that I meditate, which you couldn't do both. That
makes sense.
You just didn't have time to do both. So I was more in the cosmic field. It didn't mean I didn't have contact with them every day. It didn't mean I didn't stand with the Swamis as he's doing darshan every day. But I wasn't really involved as a personal physician, with him. Although, as I said, I did have a drop of blood that took me in the cosmic consciousness.
That's amazing.
But I actually wasn't so interested in being that kind of the doctor for Muktananda. I was just too involved in spiritual life, and being physically close wasn't that important.
Okay.
I was there. I was in the field. Doesn't matter, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely.
So
I think I would have made the other choice.
Wait, say it again.
I said I think I personally would have made the other choice, but I understand.
Well, a lot of people were really, I was very fortunate because I could have made that choice. But for my evolution, I knew that was the wrong thing, because what needed to happen is this intensive meditation in the general guru field, so to speak, and the chanting. And so the connection was there all the time. At some point, my mind and his became one. So I could just feel the emptiness in his mind, and I was brought into it. Now, if I was involved with his medical care, it wouldn't be empty. It would be this, that, and the other thing. So it wasn't, and I know what you're saying, because people get into the bhakti and serving the guru and so forth.
Yeah,
But the real way of serving was to become liberated. That's the purpose. And so
absolutely.
after 7 years, I felt it was time to leave. And so I went to him, and I'd already been acknowledged by Swami Prakashana, and I said, well, I need to leave. You know, it's my family's gone back. I've been here, but I'm a householder. I have to take care of family and so forth. And so, and I got his blessing. I said, I received what I came here for, which is liberation. And I got his blessing and a little blue pearl and kind of the touch again. So there was that acknowledgement that really happened. And then 2 days later, he left his body.
Wow.
So I took his last intensive in Mumbai, and then I got in the airplane and left. And I'm in the airplane flying by, and he's flying out of his body. So it was very fortunate, but that's the way it is. So I did get his complete acknowledgement and blessing with 2 or 3 days to go. And we didn't know he was going to leave his body. That wasn't.
That's what I was going to ask. Was it obvious? No,
No.
it wasn't.
No, he was giving an intensive to hundreds of people, thousands of people in Mumbai. And it was right before that in the ashram. And then he was in Mumbai, and then he came after the intensive. He comes back to the Ganeshpur ashram, and I'm catching an airplane, and he leaves his body. So
Incredible.
he did have heart problems. I discussed some of that in the book. He did have diabetes, and one of the subtleties here is that when you're giving Shaktipat to that many people, you can pick up people's karmas if they're not fully burnt. Okay.
I would love to hear you discuss that, how you do it differently too, because you talked about that in the book.
Right. It's a very important thing. So what happened is that the Native Americans in Oklahoma really, really wanted him to come. You know, it was part of their, whatever he fit into some of their theology, so to speak. And after he came back from that, then he had a heart attack.
Wow.
Okay. So, and then he also had diabetes. So it's like everybody kind of had diabetes. That's one reason I got into treating diabetes naturally.
I was going to ask you that.
That's part of the motivation. Prakashana had diabetes too. So
wow.
So I had this this kind of a very important connection with him in that more simple way. And so I'll explain now to answer your question. So when you're doing Shaktipat, you are taking on people's karmas.
Right.
And he used to have to meditate for 3 hours afterwards to burn it off. Now, because I was a semi-insider, I mean, I asked actually, but that was the message. So I had people watch me, psychics watch me to see how my field was being affected. And apparently I burn up the karmas. And so I'm not so affected by the process.
Okay. And what is the difference then between how Baba was doing it and how you're doing it? Can you?
I don't think there was a difference.
Okay.
I'm just, maybe it's my football player, but I'm like a Sherman tank. Okay. I just don't pick it up. I just burn it up. That's what really happens. He had to do more work to burn it up. And Shaktipat the same. By touch, by look, by sound, it's all the same. And before he left, actually about 2 months before he left his body, he actually directed me to give Shaktipat, and he gave me the cushion that he sits on.
No way.
I am. I keep it hidden, but I sit on it, you know.
Keep it hidden. Well, you
Well,
use it.
it's hidden in plain sight. But the point I'm saying is he directed me to be, you know, to act as a Shaktipat master. Okay. And all along he's training me. So at the very beginning, I don't know hardly anything about this stuff. And it's like, the doctor, take care of this person. They're having a Kundalini crisis. He doesn't say it that way. Take care of this. So I learned kind of by direct experience how to work with these things. And he was kind of putting me in those situations for me to learn. So from the very beginning, he was on my case, because in the end of the story, he says, okay, now you give Shaktipat. We never had a discussion until he directed some of the swamis to give me his cushion, and, you know, and he directed me to give Shaktipat. It wasn't like, I'm training you to be a Shaktipat guru. That was never said. It was happening. Do you see what I mean? So yes. I was then put in charge of anybody that seemed to have a Kundalini crisis, which is kind of a bigger responsibility than ashram, because people, they come from all over the world, and if they aren't able to handle the energy, I had to send them home. It wasn't the easiest.
Oh, really? You actually had to make that decision.
Right, because see,
wow,
his position, which I think was really totally right on, was if you can't handle the energy and stay grounded, then you're not ready to be here. Okay, so he emphasized being grounded at the same time as being flying at the same time. So if you couldn't kind of get a hold of it in 3 days, you had to leave. And I was the one that had to make that determination, had to work with people, how to help them, and so forth. So it was a lot of responsibility. But again, he was training me. So he was constantly putting me in different situations, but without saying anything but, you know, putting my feet in the fire to do certain things. I'll give you another example. Go ahead.
You had the psychology background also.
Well, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm trained as a psychiatrist.
Right.
And
so
that was part of it, but that was the excuse, so to speak.
Yes.
It's like the person falls down their bicycle, go get the doctor. Well, he was protecting me from being, you know, getting sunstroke or whatever. Do you see what I mean? It was like, that's the way we did things. Everything was, the Indian way is not direct, it's circular. So things get done circular. So another area where he trained me was in the mornings. I would be up at 2, meditating, working with the Shiva Lingam, the bilba leaves, doing these ceremonies, meditating for a few hours. Then I would go back and get my family to do the morning chanting, which starts at 4:30. So every morning I would walk with my daughter, but suddenly every time we went by a certain place, she'd start crying. Like, what's going on? She's 5 years old. Okay, she'd start crying. It's like, ugh. So this kept going on, and I couldn't figure it out. So I went to Swami Muktananda, and she didn't know what was going on. She was
That's what I was going to ask you. She didn't describe anything.
I mean, I didn't have a clue. She didn't have a clue. All she knew is she would start crying and get very upset. She's very sensitive. So what he said to me is, there's a demon in the adjoining field that's disrupting her. I don't know anything about demons, okay? And he says, well, here are the mantras to do. You go out in the field and take care of it. How's that for a start? So I have to go out in this field, the adjoining field to the ashram, and banish the demon. What do I know, right?
Were you terrified? Were you or not?
Let's just say it wasn't my first choice to do. But when the guru says that, you got to do it. So he did prepare me. And so I did go out, head on with the demon, banish the demon, never again any problem. So that's how I learned. It was by the director. Now I do, as a result of that, and other things, in the process, I work with people, and sometimes with the Kundalini psychosis, you have demons involved, or people do ayahuasca or peyote, and they'll get a demon or an entity. So, but based on that experience, which tended to grow because I had some other training later, part of my work is, in a sense, doing demon exorcisms. Okay. So,
Do you feel that the ayahuasca, because I've had that experience as well with people, do you feel that the ayahuasca itself has an entity attached to it, or it just opens people up to allow that in?
both. Ayahuasca is an entity that people even will channel it, and not just ayahuasca, marijuana is one of the big players, peyote, they all open you up to entity or demon invasion. It's not going to happen every time, but it happens significantly. And that is what it is. But it is its own energy as well. Peyote
Right.
has its own energy. There is an energy of like a deva, of a plant, deva. It's the deva of ayahuasca. So, or the deva of marijuana, or you follow what I'm saying here, okay?
I do, and I have questions about that, but
Yeah. So
I just go ahead.
From that experience where I had to go out in this field to deal with this demon, because this was my daughter, I had to do it, and it was Guru's directive. Then I built up the confidence. It's like, oh, okay, I can do this. Not that I ever intended to do this, but I can do it because he empowered me. So that was how he prepared me.
That's huge. Yes.
Later, I did get more training, and those classical things where the person's elevating, their head spinning around, and all those things. That
Whoa.
Okay. I was trained in a more serious, in more specific way. His training was, here's some mantras, do it. Okay. So that's the way it happened. Everything was informal in a certain way, but very particular, if that makes sense. I can look back and say, yeah, I was being trained, no question about it. And how to work with Kundalini psychosis, transcendence, and to help people in my meditations after Shaktipat. I was given basically the full spiritual anatomy, which wasn't really there in the West. And I do write about it in my books and in the book Into the Nothing. So all that is going on. I'm getting all this stuff because that's my mission, so to speak. Now back to the issue of burning up karma. So we are going to do, and you mentioned it, a Shaktipat today. So there are 4 things that happen, basically. One is, for some people, the awakening of the Kundalini. Second is the enhancement of the Kundalini. Third is the burning of karma, but I also can pick that up, but it burns up because I've already done that. And the fourth is a little bit of my soul goes into the person. This is very, what I just said about the soul is kind of traditional, actually, in some of the mystical Kabbalistic teachings. So they're aware of that. So there is that soul energy transmission. So in Devarim 34:9, Moses sends his energy into Yehoshua, and so the spirit's in him. And so his actual soul energy goes into him to empower him. So all that's going on when we do this, okay?
So do you consider that Shaktipat? I love the crossing of the religions with the Shakti and the Kundalini.
Well, it's all the same, different names. Okay. So whether we call it Haneha Shmeka B'Shefa, which is the Western tradition, with Moses, the flames are above their head. With Jesus, the flames are above their head. That's the awakening of the spiritual energy. Okay. Moses puts the energy into Yehoshua. And it's all classical descriptions of the awakening of the spiritual energy in the lineage. Only at those times it was very rare. And really, Nityananda only initiated a few people. Muktananda's directive was wake up the world.
Right.
So he initiated thousands of people, like awaken the Kundalini in thousands of people. So there's this spreading because it's time for that to happen.
Right.
So I'm kind of part of that. Okay, here's my cushion, literally. My cushion I sat on for 7 years in front of you. Here's my cushion. You're acknowledged and go do your work. So that's kind of how that came about. So it kind of gives you a feeling. But in addition, he did all these other things, like with my daughter, getting rid of entities and demons. It's like, and preparing me to deal with the issues of Kundalini psychosis as a psychiatrist background as well, so I can make that distinction. If you're just a psychiatrist and you don't understand spiritual life, what are you going to do? If you're just in the spiritual life, it's really hard without the psychiatric background to make that distinction and to help people.
Right. So have you trained other psychologists to recognize the Kundalini symptoms?
Well, in general, from the Kundalini Crisis Clinic and Lee's book, that was a starting point. So I don't do a lot of training because not that many psychiatrists actually have that background, spiritual background. But it's
Right.
out there and people know about it. Like
it seems like it would be very.
Go ahead.
It seems like it would be very helpful if more psychiatrists knew about it, especially nowadays when people don't know what's happening.
It would be, but it's kind of out there in a different way, and unfortunately, they don't have the spiritual background. And people have set Kundalini psychosis clinics up, but they don't have a background, either psychologically or really been doing sadhana. So for them, it's like a new age thing. But there are a few people around who do get it, and we, I'll talk with and I'll do training, but it's very private in the picture because not that many people are really ready. It's enough that they recognize it and can refer. If I would say, and there are just very few people who have the double background, and that's why I think he kind of selected me in that way. And also, as I say, as people have looked at my aura, I burn the karmas up. I don't seem to take on the karmas of the people, whereas he was to some extent and had to burn them up with meditating afterwards. For whatever reason, there's no difference in the technique, if you get what I'm saying. It's just for whatever reason.
Well, I remember also hearing that Dhyan Yogi also had to do that. He had to take time to burn all the karma.
And I've explored it because I'm aware that that's what you often have to do. And I just think it's one of my points in Into the Nothing is you gradually reach a certain point, and then it's a lifestyle that's always burning the karmas, that's always, expanding the consciousness. So I look at it as a lifestyle. I talk about 6 foundations, 7-fold peace as a lifestyle, which leads to liberation. So I call, basically the holistic liberation way. Okay. And rather than a spiritual practice, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
More of a lifestyle.
So all that kind of gets incorporated in that. And in the Zen world, I used to see a lot of Zen practitioners, have this Kundalini psychosis thing, and that what is going on? You're not supposed to move around. They're having kriyas, and this is happening.
Right, that would be really hard.
Yeah, they're getting beaten over the head with the stick and all that.
Right.
But as the information is filtered out, I see less of that because the Zen masters are, they're being affected by it, and they begin to understand what's going on. So that's what I'm saying. There's kind of seeping into the culture of that, if that makes sense. I think that the important thing is that the spiritual teachers have to be aware that they're not picking up the energies of the students and affecting them. Muktananda goes out to, I don't know the name of the tribe, but out there in Oklahoma, and he gets a heart attack. He clearly picked that up, okay? There's no question about it.
And he must have been aware that that was going to happen, don't you think?
Yes, and he had some hesitation about going out there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was his sacrifice. He understood the bigger role for himself. So that was.
Did he have diabetes before he went to meet with the tribe?
Say it again, please.
Did he have the diabetes before he went to meet with that tribe?
Oh,
he did. Okay.
So a lot of the Indians have diabetes. It's huge. So
is that diet, or is that some sort of karmic?
No, it's more diet. There's a lot of sweets. And finally, at some point, I kind of led a little protest. And it's like, you got this junk oil, you got all this sugar. This is
the ashram.
So they actually set up a separate room for those who wanted a cleaner diet.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
was that all the Westerners?
Yeah, but I was speaking the truth. Okay.
Yes.
And that's important for that. And then we also have to look at prasad. Where the guru, they give you, it's always a sweet. So sugar is just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of diabetes, and in general, okay, as well as kind of in the ashram setting because of so much sugar. So that's more of a cultural thing, really.
Yes.
So that's kind of funny that way. So that kind of gives you, let's say, a little bit of a background of how he really worked with me, which was directly, specifically from demon removal to Kundalini transcendence and psychosis. He just put me in the line of fire and said, go for it. And if you have a question, you can come ask me.
And what do you feel that your past life relationship with him is? Do you have that sense?
Well, I mentioned several spiritual masters who I've been connected with. And he's really part of, I'm going to say that, all the way back to Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But also, to be honest, when we really look at the whole thing, Rama Sita, right?
Mm-hmm.
He gave me the name Rohita, which is a Rama name. Everybody
okay.
else he gave Shiva names. So they go, okay, so why is that? But when I look at it and look at the astrology, my astrology is identical to Rama.
Wow.
And there's a thing Book of Guru. I write about it in Into the Nothing. And again, they were blown out because I have the identical Rama astrology.
I love that story that you told about that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, let me just, the idea is that there's a Book of Guru. If you're in it, it lays out all your past lives, but also your present life. And so in the Book of Guru, yes, I got TB at age 1. Yes, it just bang, 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 and including my time with Muktananda and Prakashananda and Sai Baba Shruti. But there's a whole Rama energy, Rama Sita, okay, and Rama Lakshmi, because of the feminine lineage. And all that goes on, but I'm going to go a slightly different areas that these beings would sometimes materialize. And so most of the gods and goddesses materialized when I was in the ashram in India.
Mm-hmm.
And even there's an image of 3 heads, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. And I kept seeing it, like, who's that? And I never figured it out until I was at Prakashananda's little ashram, and there was a tree with 3 equal trunks. And it's like, what? And he explained that that was Dattatreya, which is what was known as the primordial guru.
Okay, yes.
Dattatreya. And so that suddenly makes a lot of sense. Along the way, Lakshmi, one of the Rama's wife, really. Well, Rama and Sita, but Lakshmi is kind of precedes that. And she appeared and literally merged with me. So I took on a lot of the, I'm going to say, feminine qualities in this. That as I took on qualities from the masculine, but I also took on very explicit feminine transmission, kind of a cosmic lovemaking, but with a materialized person body. And so there was a transfer of energy that way too. So it's, and that's in California that happened, you know, when I do the fire ceremony one morning. So these astral plane forms can materialize and really interact with you. Sai Baba of Shirdi, who left his body in 1918, one day I was taking a walk with Swami Prakashananda, and he materializes, gives me Shaktipat, knocks me down, but it knocked me backwards. It was like, okay, am I having a delusion? And Swami Prakashananda acknowledges that was Sai Baba of Shirdi. I mean, I can see the form, the real form of him.
Yes.
So there is kind of more of a walker between the worlds. And so Lakshmi will materialize, or Sita, or, you know, Sai Baba of Shirdi, Abraham in the Western traditions materialize and would actually implant certain energies. You know, Abraham, the energy of love and kind of oneness, tent open all the ways. Lakshmi is saying certain explicit feminine qualities. So there's that kind of connection that way. And it goes on and on. So they're working with us. It just, for me, it's a little bit more concrete. That's the best way I can say it. And there are witnesses that have seen them materialize. Okay. Like Sai Baba of Shirdi materializing, literally, and giving me Shaktipat. It's like, okay, that's clearly happening. It took me a while to believe that. Not with Sai Baba, but the fact that all these images coming and materializing and giving teachings, and like physical teachings, like with Lakshmi taking on the feminine, sacred feminine energies, like really permeating, you know, kind of as I say, cosmic lovemaking. These are real things.
Yes.
And if it goes enough over years and years, you begin to believe and feel that this is real, it's not your imagination. That's really what I'm trying to say, is that I'm, in my book, Into Nothing, I'm very clear, this is very real, and there are witnesses showing it's very real, if you see what I'm saying.
Yes. And of course, I want to go into, so your relationship with Shanti is a direct representation of that? Do you feel?
Yeah. So for me, Shanti is the incarnation of Lakshmi. So we have Rama Lakshmi. She has a very strong yogic background for years and years and years. So we basically didn't have to ever talk about lifestyle or, you know, spirituality. It was all there. But she what I call she brings the sacred feminine in another way into my life that creates a balance in that way. And so that's a lot about where in my book I talk about sacred relations as a path to liberation. Okay, and it's a path, but also it goes on and on, enhancing the liberation experience. Liberation transition. I think that's a better way to understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Because it builds and builds, and just suddenly the glass ceiling breaks and you're there. So I have a lot of poetry in the book about that, because it is more a level of poetry as well. So Into the Nothing, I mean, I could look up the poem and see. But
Please do. In exploring Waiting for My Beloved, reading that poetry was just awe-inspiring. Yes, they're saying yes, 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 yes. That's it.
so this is a little bit of poem I wrote to Shanti. Only myself to give. I give you all that there is nothing left. Do not be deluded or seduced by name, fame, power, money, labels of realization, sattvic lifestyles, dharmas of what I can give. In untamed childlike sweet innocence, I give you all. I am that I am. You are the chosen one because you can receive it all. You can hold it all and dance wildly with me until we become the ecstatic dance and joy of the one. Beyond understanding. May the Devi's dance party in our hearts be eternal. So that's key to our relationship.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'll give you one more short poem. Tantric sunrise, awakening from the exquisite bliss of sleep, gently massaging your breast in succulent vortexes, feeling the subtle heat increase as your nipples in this body pulse with blood. Our lips lusciously touch, giving birth to our tongues, which mate like ovum and sperm, giving birth to life. In that moment, the light of 1,000 suns explodes in my head. What an awesome sunrise, which goes on all day long, forever keeping me awake. So the power of the sacred feminine in this is powerful. So Shanti brings that into the relationship of the sacred relationship. And I actually write a lot about this because in the West, sacred relationships are the newest frontier, of course, the oldest frontier. So you always have, Lakshmi and Rama, and we have these plays that are going on of the male, female, Shiva and Shakti. Okay, so there's always a play between the sacred feminine and sacred masculine going on, and of course, it has to become internalized within ourselves. So a key to sacred relationship in a spiritual point of view is internalizing, for me, the sacred feminine within, as well as the sacred, masculine for a woman. But it's a unit, it's an inner unity that happens. So Shanti has and continues to play a very powerful role as the sacred feminine. And we have a paradigm in relationships. We have Shiva, who sits quiet and there's no words. Okay, Shiva awareness, and that's the masculine, and the feminine is in a sense the divine dance of the sacred feminine. Okay, that is at play, and the idea is to bring that together within yourself. Yes. And so that's kind of a key to understanding on a spiritual plane the meaning of sacred relationship. It is to support liberation process and support the post-liberation process as well.
Right.
And it doesn't end. It never ends. You're never done. Self-realization, God-realization, there's a continuum. So that's kind of a key, I think, understanding of when I talk about sacred relations. It really is the play, because the Kundalini symbolizes by the sacred feminine. Okay, in the awakening of spirituality, and that's what goes on. in the play of Shiva and Shakti as it unfolds.
Yes. So do you feel that your own union within yourself is what allowed her to come into your experience in that way?
Yeah. And you're asking another level of question, which is soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
And your own spiritual work is what has to happen to draw a appropriate soulmate to you,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Oh,
And
yes.
and so really my emphasis is do your work, and then your soulmate shows up.
Mm-hmm.
He or she will be drawn to you.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of fulfills it because it's supposed to be someone of a different age, a different region of the world. So she's a little younger, and she's from New Zealand, and it's different worlds, but that's a little bit of a classical definition of soulmate in that way.
Yes.
But the most important thing, and it goes both ways with this, is that the other person really believes and supports one's realization process.
Mm-hmm.
That is critical. And I
Mm-hmm.
advise everyone, if you're in a relationship, you may have a sexual relationship, this kind of, but if you don't have that real support and belief in your liberation process, you're going to be undermined.
Yes.
And for me, Shanti totally gets it, totally believes it, and is part of that. So it's really, really important in relationship. I'll put it that way.
I have a teacher right now named Danny, who I always recognize his relationship with his partner as that beautiful relationship. And now I found another, which is you. But I can't say that they're common that I've seen.
Right. It takes a little work. So the way I break it down for people about sacred relationship is if the mate is just neutral, it's okay, it's workable. If they support it and really support your awakening and they're not interested, that's workable. Best is two people both totally inspiring each other spiritually. And if the mate is against it or doesn't really accept it in a certain way, that's very serious, because the point of all life is to wake up spiritually. So that's where you draw a question of in relationship of where you choose. So if you're being undermined, that's not a sustainable relationship for spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're different levels. Best, everybody's on the same page and it's all supporting and having faith in your liberation, you having faith in their liberation process, whatever that is. Post-liberation process. That's very, very key in spiritual life. Very, very key.
Gorgeous. Let's see. Should I check the live stream? Would you like to see if we have questions, or do you want to go in Shaktipat? What's your feeling?
Well, we can take, I didn't realize it was 2:00. We went very fast.
I know.
So I can take a little bit of questions. Yeah.
Well, I have some just, let's see. Somebody says, oh, my friend Henry, who I work with, he's excited for Shaktipat. Thank you. How can one use fasting to burn entities? Any specific advice? Also, in your practice, what was the most beneficial practice or tool for helping with Kundalini psychosis?
Well, those are more technical questions. What I would say is you don't really burn entities with meditation. You really do need some help, and they need to be extracted. Now, what we call samskaras, which are psychological kind of blockages, they can be burnt with meditation and Kundalini. But entities are really entities. And as you increase your light, it's harder for them to enter. But if you already have an entity, you really do need to have someone extract them.
And do you do that with people still?
I do. Because there are very few people who do that.
Yes. So people can contact you if they have a concern about that.
Right. You know,
You're a little hesitant.
I'm hesitant because we're kind of moving to Israel, and I do a lot of it actually because there's so few people who do this work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, you know, it's pretty safe for me. I don't really have a problem at different levels of entities. But I do recommend you do need someone to help if that's different than samskara, which is a negative thought form that may be blocking. That can be burned up with the Kundalini. We do teach a course that's more of a Jnana Yoga course, Yoga of the Mind, that helps people get rid of negative thought forms. In fact, in a few days, we're in a spiritual fast right now. In a few days, day 2, 5, in about 6 days, we're going to do a 3-day course. I call it 0 point because you get to a 0 point on that. So it helps you learn how to identify thought forms and release them.
Where would someone go to sign up for that?
They can go to treeoflife.mn.co, or they can also go to drcousens.com, and it will direct you to the right places from there.
Okay, and I will put that in the description.
Right.
And then there was also what?
I'll ask Yehoshua to send you the contact points too.
Okay, wonderful.
You may have done that already. Okay.
Also about the Kundalini psychosis, I don't.
That's a more technical thing, and it can't be explained in 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Would you recommend Lisa Nella's book?
Yes. Hold on a second. Yes. It's a good beginner, but it's just so much beyond that. And you really have to have that background. Lee was a psychiatrist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, you know, that's why we work together. So it's a good starter to kind of get an idea.
And is there a certain type of psychology that you could look for someone who could work with you that is familiar with the Kundalini?
It would be more transpersonal psychology.
Okay. That's what Bonnie Greenwell said. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, they have to have, you know, that background in spirituality as well, which is different than I meditate a little bit. It's like really more serious background, and specifically a background in Kundalini.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in that.
Okay. Okay. Should we meditate?
Yes. So we are going to do meditation, and the key thing here is several points. One is you want to get comfortable. You want to observe rather than get engaged with the thoughts of the mind, and be a witness, in other words. And then we want to focus and quiet the mind. We are, you know, when I was with Muktananda, I was giving really 2 specific mantras that we want to repeat the mantra, which is a name of God. After a 21-day water fast in 1995, I was given more of a Western mantra, which is what I was told to use. And that's what Moses received at the burning bush. Yod on the in-breath, Hey on the out-breath. Wah on the in-breath, Hey on the out-breath. Yod from the base to the heart, and Hey out to the heart. And then Wah from the third up to the third eye, and then Hey out to the heart, merging the heart and the mind, the heavens and the earth.
So is it Yod, Y-O-D, or Yo?
Y-O-D.
Okay.
Y-O-D, and then H-E-H, and then Wah, W-A-H, and then Hey again.
Okay.
People pronounce it slightly different, but that's what I was given, okay, at the end of 21. So I moved from a more Indian mantra to this. And again, one of my messages in the book is follow the divine will for yourself. Follow that divine will. You just have to trust it. And that's part of spiritual life. That's part of spiritual relationship, is that the couple acknowledges the unfolding of the divine will and where that all goes.
Yes.
Okay. So now, obviously, we're over the internet. So we have by look, by touch, by sound. Those are ways that Kundalini is awakened and activated, and then we also have the burning of karma, and finally a bit of my soul goes into you. So all that's going on. We're obviously going to do it by look, right? We don't have much touch going on, but also sound. I'll do a yod, which is the first letter sound out of the nothing. So people just need to look at me as I'm focusing it, and we'll do that for about 20 seconds, and then we'll give a yod, and then we'll go into meditation. We'll meditate about 15 minutes, and then we'll have a little feedback. So that's my safety thing, to give feedback.
Right. Perfect.
Okay, here we go.
Nada.
Now we go into meditation. Repeat the mantra, yod, and then breath, hey, and then breath, wah, and then breath, hey, and then breath. When your mind is quiet, let go of the mantra and just be in the stillness. Okay, very good. Slowly come out of meditation. Are you okay there?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to do is take a few minutes if anybody wants to share if they've had something like heat or seeing colors or movements of the eyes or the physical body, any of those kind of things. This would be a time to ask a question or share that, and I'll give a comment on it.
I can share mine.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, it was interesting because I have this thing in the middle of my back that is, it's just been there since my late teens. I've worked on it so deeply, so intensely, and I just can't budge it. But at first there was a lot of congestion in my heart, like that kind of like, it won't. And then there was a lot of Native American something going on, like flashes of Native American, I don't know if it was a past life, Native American things. And then the heart released and there were an image of a lot of horses running, almost like a stampede or something. So there was something Native American involved with the heart opening. And then just right at the end, a strong light went from my crown right into that spot in the middle of my spine. So thank you. That was wonderful.
What happened with the light? Did it change that spot in any way?
I did not feel any physical sensation or anything as far as.
Like, even now, what, are you feeling any different?
Yeah, there's less tension because I get it on the whole right side of my body connected to that spot. And there's definitely less tension in the neck, like just observing right now how I'm feeling. So it feels really deeply karmic, this thing.
Right.
So
it's good because when the energy's coming down and going to that place, it is a sign that the whole Kundalini process is working on that. I think that's safe to say. And clearly, past lives come up in some scars that get released. So you're clearly having some past life being released there as well. And there may have been some eye movements, third eye opening, heart chakra opening. So
yeah, the heart's very like, whoo, right now.
yeah. And so that's very classical. I mean, you've already had the Kundalini working, but the expansion of the Kundalini energy with the Shaktipat is clearly what you're experiencing. So that's great. Good.
Right. Yeah. Let's see.
Anybody else have anything, any questions before we
Oh,
start?
somebody said I can't see Dr. Cousens now. I'm not sure what happened there.
I'm here. I can see it. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just felt peace and clear of thoughts. I'm not sure what NVRM means. Oh, never mind. Okay. Heat at the left side of my neck and behind and under left ear.
So that's a sign that the Kundalini is awakened. And really the throat and the ears are more to the sixth chakra. So the fifth and sixth chakra are particularly where it's opening. But when any of the chakras opening, it really means all the chakras in the sense are opening. It's just where you're happy to feel it. In this case, the throat and third eye.
Mm.
So great. Kundalini awakening.
Great. Yeah. That's all for now. Yeah. Whew. That was beautiful.
Good. Well, it's great the work you're doing, and I really send you blessings that it continue to expand. The word I use for the sacred feminine, like my wife, Shanti, is rainbow radiance. It's the play of consciousness in the physical world that brings light and understanding to it. It brings the holiness to living in the physical plane. So may your rainbow radiance expand and inspire many people.
Yes, and you too. And wow, I don't know how you do all the work that you do, but Keep doing it.
Because I'm
Well,
not doing it.
you are in the world.
I'm not doing it. I'm just putting myself in the line of the energy, and it does me. Honestly, it does me.
Yeah.
So I don't think about it as work per se. A lot comes in, but that's God's play. I'm just surrendered to that unfolding. So I'm not ever doing it. Too much work to be doing it.
Oh my gosh. If I don't know you, people that are watching, you might want to explore some of the wonderful work Dr. Cousens is doing all around the world. It's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah.
So thank you. And the vegan thing is very close to my heart. So yes, thank you for
Well,
that.
good, because obviously we're doing a lot of work that way because it's the best diet for becoming a superconductor of the divine. We want to eat to become a superconductor of the divine. Meat, fish, chicken, dairy, they all are a sludge to the Kundalini. So.
Okay.
Okay, well, it's Kai.
All right.
Great
Thank you.
working with you. And again, may your rainbow radiance expand to inspire many people.
Thank you. Shanti too. Even though I didn't meet her, I feel her. So thank you.
Okay.
All right. Great.
We'll meet again.